Hey y'all, Travis here with Launch Mission Creative. So I had a webinar planned last night. This was called Board Books by Design, where I was going to be interviewing Lindsay Kellar-Madsen about her journey in publishing a board book. And I scheduled it for 8 p.m. my time, which I'm in Central Europe. So that would have been 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. Well, for some reason my website was showing like 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So times got a little mixed up on the website. We still had the webinar, but just wasn't at the time that everyone thought it was. So I really sincerely apologize for that. I'm going to fix that for future webinars. By the way, I do have a webinar coming up called Illustrated by Design, and I'm going to be talking about how to search for, communicate with, and hire your next illustrator for your children's book. So if you're interested in that, go to my website, launchmissioncreative.com/webinars. Sign up. Hopefully it'll be the right time, but I try to plan it around 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check that out, and let's get on with the recorded webinar. Thanks. That's right. That's right. Well, I guess we'll do a proper start here. Just to introduce myself, I'm Travis Peterson. I've been like I said, mostly a print designer for over a decade, and it's been in-house for different organizations, mostly like nonprofit organizations, and then I started my own business working from home, and that's when I moved from the U.S. to Norway about 5 years ago. And it wasn't really until I wrote my own children's book that I started designing children's books and saw the niche there, and so many authors that needed that kind of a service. And it's been really fun to help so many authors over the past couple of years. So my business is called Launch Mission Creative, and I'm, like I said, designing children's books, but also books of all genres. And I'm expanding my services now to include things like A+ content and Kickstarter graphics and print brokering, where I can sort of handle all of the communication between the author and the printers, and and even doing webinars like this, where I can sort of give a little bit of education to authors and show them how really the design process can be involved in every step of the publishing journey. So that's something that I'm starting now, is this webinar series called Self-Publishing by Design. And Lindsay is my guinea pig, you might say. This is my very first webinar for this, and we're calling it Board Books by Design because she's done such a wonderful job with her own book. And Lindsay and I were kind of on the same journey together. We wrote about the same time, and then ran Kickstarters the same time, and ended up publishing, like, I want to say the same month everything was released. And it was fun to watch each other, and sort of I think we joked a lot because we were sort of on the same wavelength in our thinking and how we would approach things. So it's been fun to watch. So Lindsay, thanks so much for doing this and joining me in this call, and I look forward to hearing more about it. So introduce yourself, Lindsay, and tell us, first of all, how you ended up in Denmark, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. No. Hi, I'm Lindsay, and I'm Travis's guinea pig. I'm here. No, actually, I actually think I'm the perfect guest for you to have in your first episode of this, because I've been a happy customer who has turned to you for graphic design services. So I can start by saying that he's very good at what he's doing, and I'm thrilled that he's branching out your services so that there are more things that I can turn to you for. Um, I'm a first-time author. By way of background, if that's helpful, I am a business developer at a university here in Denmark. And how I ended up here, I have a Danish husband, and we were, living in Europe after getting married, and we started our family while living in Switzerland, and it really, shook up our priorities. So I took this job that I have now as a business developer here in Denmark so that we could be closer to at least half of our family. I'm Canadian. You can probably hear. So we decided to, to sort of base ourselves near family as we were, making little humans. And it also is a really, I mean, Scandinavia, Travis, this is a really great place to be raising a family,
Hmm.
and I'm really happy that we're here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what inspired you to write a book, and where did that kind of fall in with your journey of starting this family? And I'm sure that was all part of it. So, yeah, talk
Yeah,
to us
absolutely.
about
So
that.
I probably makes sense to, I'll see if I can find the camera here properly, but this is the cover of my very first self-published board book, of course, The Lovely Haze of Baby Days. And it very much came out of a situation I found myself in a couple of years ago. I had 4 kids born within 5 years, and yes, that includes twins. And I mean, I was in a place I think that was just really overwhelming. I had, a lot of little people and a lot of needs, and I myself had just gone through a pretty enormous challenge bringing twins to term. So I found myself in need of a creative outlet, or at least, a way to create some space for myself. And I think the way a lot of people, a lot of in our community anyway, that fall into self-publishing, you find a purpose or something that you really love and feel is important and want to bring into the world, and putting it in print, as something material in hand that you can give to the people you want to serve, it feels like the right medium. So
Mhm.
I would say what started as a creative outlet for me, it became something I really loved doing. And it wove some of my competencies in business development and allowed me to be more creative. So I joke about it being my aggressive hobby, but it's really turned into a small business that I run um, for myself and for some of the authors I get to help along the way.
Mhm. Yeah, that seems to be the trend that happens. You can't just write one book. It's kind of like getting a tattoo. I don't have any tattoos, but I've heard once you get the first one, you can't just stick with the one.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, right. So you're a busy mom, 4 kids, is that right?
Yeah, 4.
One set of twins.
Mm.
What's the oldest age for your kids?
So my oldest just turned 7. So I
7.
have, and yeah, they 7 and 5 in December, and then the twins are 2 now.
So how did you find time to do all this? You said you did it kind of in your off time, your hobby, but how do you do
I
that?
mean, I feel like parents know there is no off time, like
Yeah.
it's kind of this really wonderful 24-hour job. So I mean, I would say patience. I know that my timeline was different than if I didn't have a young family, so I was patient with myself and tried to, create windows where I could be creative also with my kids. So I've talked, in other forums about I love, integrating my kids into the process, showing them things and talking about what I'm writing and bringing them in. So it doesn't mean trying to create artificial time away from them all the time. That said, I mean, I certainly did use a lot of evenings or nap times, but it's because I was really excited about the book and the message. Um, if it's helpful for context, I wrote the book to support new moms through this baby book. So
Mm.
it's very much about the lifestyle. I mean, it's silly and it rhymes, and the illustrations are gorgeous. So it serves as a great book for baby showers, where babies don't necessarily need the content as much as they do the visual stimulation. And I sort of wove a message in there for moms, and that really brought me a lot of purpose. So I think for anyone new to the journey of authorship or thinking about publishing, I would say really sink yourself in, or sink into whatever your purpose is, and that will help you
Hmm.
find little pockets of time to work within.
Yeah. So it's an interesting book. It's got an interesting balance to it because, like you said,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a board book, but it's not for babies. It's for moms. So it's kind of like the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So did you decide to write a board book for kids first, and it kind of evolved into a story for moms, or did you start with the idea to write a book for moms and suddenly you evolved into a board book? How did that happen?
I would love to tell you that it was like super strategic. I think I
Yeah.
knew I knew, you read moo, ba, la, la, la enough times and you realize that like, okay, the kid doesn't know what this thing is about. And I found myself always on the floor with my young kids and reading to them, and probably serendipity
Yeah.
around the same time. Um, I had a number of friends kind of, discussing how much they'd struggled in that first year and they hadn't said a word about it. And I think, in that moment, they probably saw something of themselves and how I was behaving, and they wanted to reach out, and I thought, like, why do we try and hide this mess? Why do we try and hide this chaos? So it is such a
Mm.
spectacular, magical time. And I think I always knew the book had to be a board book, is the short answer to your question.
Okay.
It started, as me writing probably poetry and thinking about it, this could be a really cute medium to reach mom. So I always like pitching the book. It is a baby book because, the 0 to 3 audience isn't as cognizant of like a plot line in that way.
Mm.
Um, and, I have people who love the book sending me videos of their toddler who's memorized it, like memorized the lyrics of my book, because it's rhyme, it rhymes, it has a rhythm and a that to that. So from a language perspective, it's words and it's rhythm, and I had it checked by an early speech therapist. So
Mm.
it fits all the bills of what a really young kid needs. And I like thinking about it kind of as an incognito message for the reader. The reader is the
Yeah.
parent, the reader is the mom. She's the one, late nights, early mornings. And I thought, I just love that concept of weaving in this really supportive, loving message. And it's turned into a book that moms give each other, and like this nod of solidarity from your baby's bookshelf. So I personally loved a lot of things about that.
Well, I think it's like I said, it's a nice balance, and it's an interesting take, because moms and dads, if they have young babies, young toddlers, they're all the time reading these board books. So why not develop a board book that is not only nice for the kids, but also, inspires and is attractive for the parents as well. So I think you did a wonderful job with it.
The
Um,
the other, I was going
yeah.
to say, the one thing I forgot to mention is I remember clearly, sitting on nursing the twins and like looking at the stack of big books that are for moms. Like, oh, these are books for moms. These Chicken Soup for the Mom Soul, and I was like, I don't have time to sit and read those big books. Like I don't get through those at this point in my life. So I'm like, what I can get through is like the kids books, because those are the ones we're reading already. And I think we talked about this for later, but the format really made sense because, I didn't want to hide a paperback book. That's what I do in my house. I hide the paperback books away like a controlled substance, because they're going to destroy it when they're,
Hmm.
when they're little. They just want to tear the pages. So this is something that's durable and will last. And I think that's why a lot of people are attracted to this format.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a board book, they're not as um, they're not traditional in the sense of a paperback or a hardcover book. So tell us about some of the challenges you've faced in the whole journey of publishing this board book from beginning to end. What kind of speed bumps did you hit along the way?
I think the very first thing is you hear, there's different business models that people are running with in the self-publishing world. One of the early ones I heard about was to, create the creative product, so a book, and then run with print on demand. And that also seemed to be a model that could work for a busy mom who doesn't necessarily want to deal with the distribution challenges of getting a book printed and then maybe warehouses and who ships the things and all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
um, so some people are going to come across print on demand like through Ingram Spark or through KDP, which is the Amazon platform. So basically that's immediately not available because board books aren't available print on demand, not in any
Mm-hmm.
kind of realistic way. There are, I think, well, there's a couple that I found in the US, but they're more of a novelty. So I think they're more like, if you just want one copy of your book, you can get I think some people do it with pictures also. So it's more,
Mhm.
like a one thing you would buy for your family, or maybe you're the grandparents. When I considered that, I thought this was something, and this was a message, this was a book that might have a wider reach, and that I really wanted to see, like, how far could it go? How many new moms could I support with this project? I knew that it had to be offset print, and it, to get the price margins to go closer to something that was viable, if that makes sense. So the first speed bump is definitely that there is no print on demand option available for
Mhm.
this format. Um, I then, because I'm not a graphic designer, or I'm not an illustrator, I don't come from the creative business background. I'm very much like health tech and business developer. I I had to learn a lot about the technical specifications. So what is this? The whole offset print process was a learning curve, and then specifically about this format, there are nuances about printing, with rounded corners, or you're printing for a really young audience, so there are some requirements from an ink perspective that you need to think about. There's just there's sort of this little spectrum of technical things to think about when you want to print in this format that I had to learn. So learning curve was probably another one, just having the appetite for that.
What about the printing process? What did you go through to find the right printer for you, and how many different printers did you reach out to? Talk to us about that.
It's probably a little hard to put a specific number, but it definitely took me a few months. Like, I want to say it's alongside, so this, a lot of the processes are going alongside each other, but it
Mhm.
took me a good 3 or 4 months of, I mean, it's due diligence of reaching out to printers through places like Alibaba, and just, scouring overseas printers. So I did look locally a little bit, but for board books, I mean, the highest quality that I was able to find, and also the because not every printer, I mean, for hardcover and soft cover, you can get North American, Canadian printers. There's, I think, quite a good range, even in Europe as well. But it was far fewer that have the heavy press machinery needed for the thicker pages, because it's essentially pressing cardboard,
Mhm.
and they need special machines for that. So um, I would say, the first step was making contact with people. Then there's sort of the screening and due diligence. Um, I personally, just for my own needs, wanted to do sort of some nuanced assessment in terms of how efficient customer service was, how reliable did I feel, like potentially sending hundreds, thousands of dollars to a company overseas. Like, it's pretty far away. So I wanted to feel confident that the people I was working with were people I trusted and had the standards that I wanted to operate within. So all of that takes some time, narrowed it down to 3 printers, and then had samples shipped to, so I paid for some samples to be shipped to me so I could hold the products in my hand, because that felt really important from a quality perspective.
Yeah.
To just, to pay attention to warping, or how durable the books felt. Um, so yeah, that wasn't my book. Those were other projects that they'd done, and you sort of give them the closest specifications to the final product you want, and then you pay for them to ship you books, and then you look and decide, and then comes this negotiation when you get quotes and negotiate, and I landed on one printer, but I was really impressed with 2 others, so I would recommend all 3.
Yeah. So, with the pricing, did you have sort of a price in mind? Because obviously there's a bit of a limitation for what you can sell the book for, right? I don't know
Yeah.
what kind of price range you're looking at for a board book compared to like a hardcover children's book.
I
Um,
think you hear that the standard price for a hardcover is 18.99, and then depending on what sales or how you're positioning your book, it could be maybe more somewhere between 15.99. You would know better than me
mm,
for hardcovers, but for board books, so the other major challenge is this: people are used to paying between $5 and $15 for a board book, and I would say
mm,
$15 is the high end, and you'll need some compelling reason to command that end of the spectrum. For simpler board books, that there's sort of a range of products that I don't know that customers are aware of when they're looking for a board book, but they exist. So you really need to understand what kind of book you are printing and be clear, I would say, on what that product should cost. So that takes a little bit of competitive research to look at, is this sort of a 3 to 5 spread book, or is it more of a traditional book with like 16 spreads, which is a longer story. So kind of understanding the different levers of how to price your book is sort of an art maybe, but it's also about understanding the market and what your customers are willing to pay for the type of book that you want to
Hmm.
print.
Well, with your book being unique in that it's not just targeting babies
Mm.
and toddlers, um, what's what sort of marketing techniques have you been using, and what challenges have you run into with marketing a book like this? Uh, is
Sure.
there?
I mean, I think what a lot of like really seasoned author veterans will tell you is the most important thing is to know your audience. And I would really endorse that advice. And I would say the better I know my audience and the better I know, the unique selling points of my book
Mm,
versus other options that my customers will have when they're shopping, I would say the better my book has been selling. So that's another area of learning, I would say, is the marketing side of how to reach your customers to know who they are and where they would find something to buy. Um, and the second half of your question, I think, was about how I found success marketing.
yeah, yeah. Have you thought of any creative ways to market
Yeah,
a board
yes.
book,
So
or even just for the audience that you have?
I would say, yeah. So some of this is definitely, I would say, broadly relevant to books in general, not just
Hmm.
board books. So I did a virtual book tour pretty early on after my launch, and I think that was really successful for generating content. So when people hear a book title, often they'll Google it and they want to maybe read reviews or see it on blogs. And I think creating that social footprint was useful. I think it's hard to track specifically, did somebody find me here or there, unless you're really paying attention to all the track links. But I have seen that as I build virtual footprint for my book, I've seen more consistency in the sales that I'm getting. And me personally, what I have capacity for is I try and be really targeted. So I don't have the bandwidth personally as a busy mom to just be like constantly, like finding everything. So, I mean, I reach out specifically to subscription boxes that I think are aligned. So there's,
Hmm.
for new moms, I don't just think about book subscription boxes. I've actually had more success in like new mom care packages. And,
Yeah.
I've had a couple of bulk orders by finding the right, finding the right small businesses that are aligned with my mission, and who understand, again, the point of my product. So I think maybe the nugget of wisdom the nugget of wisdom would be to really find people who are going to resonate with your bigger purpose for the
Hmm.
project, and who are really going to understand why you published the thing, and what distinguishes your book from others. So I think that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, that's good. So I know your Kickstarter was around the same time as mine. So I'm thinking about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Was it in the fall?
Yep.
Of Yeah. So obviously things have evolved in how you market the book. And when you think about how you did all the marketing for Kickstarter,
Mm.
and how it's sort of grown so much since then, um, how do you think things have changed, or how do you think you've had to sort of readjust? Um, I know I didn't give you this question before, so maybe I'm
No, no,
throwing it
no,
out
it's fine. I think with your first book, what I found is there's a lot of excitement about becoming an author, about creating your first book. And as I said, there's almost always a really personal nugget of like why you're doing it. There's some piece of you that's going into the project. And I think what's been evolving for me personally is I see it more becoming about my creative passion and what subjects am I really, involved in, or do I really believe in. And I'm working on a second book now, and it's not as raw and personal, but I can feel myself evolving as a creator, if that makes sense. Like, I hope my next book will be even better than the first one. And I think it becomes more about understanding. Well, I'd say some of these elements of understanding your audience and why you're writing the book become more important, because I haven't launched my second book yet, but I suspect some of that novelty will have worn off. This isn't my first book, and I would, it's not going to be friends and family that support it. Maybe, I hope they do, but I don't expect it. I think they really supported my dream of becoming an author and doing or publishing this first book. I hope that some people will still be excited about my new topic, but at the same time, I think I'm trying to lean into some of the things I've learned in the last year about marketing and what makes a good book, what makes it exciting for the people, for the readers. And I think I'm really thinking a lot about that now.
Yeah.
In a different way than, not that I didn't, I guess in the first time, but I don't know. I guess you naturally start thinking more about the customers and what they want, and you are aware how hard it is to be seen and be, in the noise of the consumer market.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the first book seems to be like your baby,
Mm,
and yeah, you're thinking about how it feels producing this baby, but then
mm,
the second one comes along and it's more like how can you make it the best for the customers,
mm-hmm.
or those that are going to pick it up on the shelf or find it on the screen or whatever. So yeah, that's an interesting take on that. Okay, so I have a couple of questions that I'm going to throw at you that I didn't give you before. Tell me what you're reading right now.
Oh, I'm reading a lot of nature play books. So I actually just got, I actually have a stack. Well, I didn't bring that stack. I brought all the board books. But I have been reading a lot of nature play books. So there's one, and then, I'll try and find it. I'll share it with you after, but it's essentially about the healing role that nature has for us, and why we should spend more out time. So it's an adult book, but
Mm-hmm.
it's digging deep into the research behind how our mental health is supported with spending time outdoors, how our brains behave differently, in fresh air and in sunlight, and some of the negative repercussions that we see in like myopia. Some of these headlines that we've seen.
Yeah.
So another one I've just got from the library is about the relationship between humans and animals and how that role has evolved over time.
Mm.
So just lots of good stuff like that, because it's background reading. I just finished one called Child of Nature, which is by the lady I'll be interviewing tomorrow. She's a Waldorf educated forest kindergarten founder here in Denmark. So, I mean, I've been leaning into that audience because my next book is all about nature.
Can you give us any hints about the next book beyond that?
Sure, I haven't really announced it yet, which I'm doing exactly like what I did with the first one, was like keeping it close. This is what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be telling you, that I'm so much better about telling people about my projects ahead of time, and I'm not. I'm like, just spending so much time with it. But the working title is Meet the Wild, and it's for this 0 to 4 age group again, and it's
Mm.
a book about seasons, and it's a baby girl and her older brother, and essentially her first year of first encounters with nature through the different seasons. So
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. Again, it's the same illustrator, and I love it completely. It's a really nice book, and it's about the growth of a child in that first year when they're developing so much. So it sort of steeps in all these big nature play concepts that we know as adults, and that the research is just exploding around.
Mm.
um, but is also this sort of introduction for where a lot of parents outside Scandinavia don't introduce their kids as early as we do here to the outdoor environment. And I'm really excited for this book to contribute to that conversation.
That sounds really fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So, name one of your favorite books from when you were a child.
Oh, so there's one I loved, and it's not at all like mine, but it's called The Nightwood by Robin Muller. So it's more fantasy. Yeah, probably a little older book. I want to guess it's more like 8 years old. But it is still a picture book, and it's got sort of this rich, fantastical story about a girl who goes exploring in the woods.
Very cool. Yeah.
Very sort of moody, dramatic pictures.
Yeah. Seems to really tie in with what you're doing now. So that's great.
Mm.
So tell us more about what you're working on now. You've mentioned the book that you're working on, but I think you have some other things in the work too.
Yeah. So I'm course, we're talking about board books. I get a lot of people reaching out to me because, of course, we make lots of noise when we publish a book, and I did about my board book. And I think there's a lot of criticism about this format because of some of the challenges. And I would argue that it's not impossible. You can, I mean, the margins are perhaps tighter, or maybe you have less flexibility. If you're able to command a price of $18.99, you have more wiggle room for advertising and for promotional things. I think some projects really are better in this format, and I know some people are really committed to publishing a board book. So I wanted to create some resources for that audience, because there are people publishing board books. So there are some indie authors who have done a really great job publishing multiple board books. I know I'm still confident that this was the right format for me and my project, and I think there are probably many others. Well, I know there are because they write me. So what I thought about doing is, I'm working on a mini course right now just for authors who want to quickly get the lay of the land and get up to speed and not spend 2 years learning all the ins and outs of how to learn about the distribution process and what there is to know about the pricing structure and where to place your books. So I'm assembling that. It's not ready yet, but I do have a free list of printers that I would love to make available. We can include that in the notes somewhere. People just go to my website and it's free, so you just pay nothing and then get it immediately in your inbox. These are the 3 printers that I would recommend. And it sort of explain there are a few other options of why I landed there. Like, these are some North American printers. I don't find the pricing competitive for bulk offset, but again, I list them as resources, and then there are a few that I would recommend getting quotes from. And I think so that's like a free thing. Of course, I think is useful for anyone who's venturing into the board book arena. Those I'm less familiar with the hardcover services or like the other things in their portfolio, but I do know most of them, if not all of them, do print hardcover or other formats. So I think a lot of that, as I've said earlier, is based on my experience with them and the quality of the projects that I've had in my hands. So I think it's a good launching place if people want to get their feet wet talking to a company that's overseas. And I mean, from the people I know that have written them, they hear from them in a day or two. So I think that's really great.
Yeah. And you've gotten samples from all these printers on this list that you have.
Yeah.
What's your website?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think, sorry.
What's your website?
LindsayKMadsen.com.
Okay.
We'll, again, wherever we post this or send it out, I'll send
it'll be in the details. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was in the video as well.
LindsayKMadsen.com. I think it's /shop will take you to where my books are, but where you can also just download the free list of printers. Of course, I think there's no total shortcuts unless I guess you pay a vanity press, but if you're going to do this, I think it's great to take like a little faster route to some good leads and then to do your own due diligence always.
Yeah, I agree. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. If there's information out there available that you can get so much quicker than trying to discover it all on your own, it's totally worth it. So I think it's great that you're doing this. Yeah.
I was going to say, but am I right that you're also helping authors get their orders as well? So like if somebody works with you for graphic design, you can help them get their orders placed with companies. Is that right? That's
right. It's only for my clients that I either design or format for, but I will help them with all of the communication with printers. I have 3 or 4 different printers that I'm in contact with, both in the US and in Europe and in Asia. And so I'm able to compare prices, and if someone decides to go through me for the printing, then I handle all of the communication and take care of all of that. So just another way to make it easier for the author. And I already have this communication going with the printer. I know their language, so it just seems like a natural step to take. So
I think this is probably what I love in general most about this indie environment is that if you want to tackle things yourself, then you can do that. There's a way, like there's a journey for that. if you are not comfortable with specific pieces, like there's no way I could illustrate my book. So
Exactly.
that is something that I outsourced, was the illustration and graphic design. That's a service that I paid for. So I committed to figuring out some of the other logistical things. Now, if that's not something that people are comfortable with, you can help them. I think that's probably another major takeaway here. Like, there are people who have been down these roads before and can help you get where you want to go faster, or you can take the time and learn things on your own.
That's exactly right. I think that's an important point. This really is like a DIY kind of process, and you can do it all yourself and save tons of money and spend a lot of time doing it. Or you can also get some people to help. Like, I'm a graphic designer, but I tell people right up front, I am not an illustrator. I hired an illustrator for my own book. I wasn't about to try to take that on myself. And I just hired someone to put together a kit for me to contact schools for author visits. Like, that's information that I know nothing about. So, yeah, do as much as you can yourself, but also look for the opportunity to bring in professionals that know what they're doing to make it an even better product. So that's great. Well,
Yeah.
Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope anyone watching will check out her book, The Lovely Haze of Baby Days. And what I would like to do now is kind of get into the nuts and bolts of things. And I have a whole stack of board books that I want to show just some different techniques to really make board books stand out. Board books are really powerful because you can do so much more with them than you can with a standard paperback or hardcover book. And so you can really do some creative things, and yeah, they're just a lot of fun. They're for kids, so why not make it fun, right? So yeah, Lindsay, you're welcome to chime in at any time, and we have Lauren on the call too. And so, Lauren, if you have any questions or comments about what you see, I know you have a design background as well, so you're more than welcome to chime in if you would like. The first one, and excuse me, all of these books are in Norwegian, so aside from Lindsay, I don't know if anyone else will be able to read them. I know the
I've got
language
some
there in
English ones
Denmark is
here.
similar, so
I've
yeah.
got English ones over here, Travis.
Yeah. So this one is actually we all know the Gruffalo. This is part of that series, but this is a board book with Stickman. Yeah, there you
Now,
go.
look, you've got two fans here. This is
Yeah.
Stickman.
So this is a fairly simple board book. It's much like yours, Lindsay, in the way it's printed. It uses very similar boards. By the way, the boards are much thicker, obviously, than a paperback, which gives you the options to do all these creative things. This one it has some foil on the cover, which you can do for pretty much any kind of book. But I just want to show that you can do the same techniques for standard books as you can for board books. So
And this is one, I think yours is the same, right? So it's rounded corners, but it is the same size all the
yeah,
way around.
yeah.
I have a different version of the Gruffalo where it actually has a slightly oversized. I don't know what
Hmm.
that's called. I can't. Or the wrapped cover,
A
maybe.
wrapped cover, yeah. I've got a few of those as well. So yeah, that's good. In fact, the next one I have here. Um,
I should shush, huh? And not ruin your nuts and bolts.
no, 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 you're fine. Jeg snakker. I talk. I am talking, maybe. This is what you were saying. It's a wrapped cover, which means the artwork, if I can pretend that my notes here are the artwork that goes on the cover, it has to be larger than the cover, and then it's wrapped around the board and glued inside. Yeah, you're showing, yeah. So it's a little bit larger than the interior boards. And is that one padded?
No, this one's not, but I do have padded ones that feel really nice. They feel a
Mm-hmm.
little bit like, I want to say, premium. again, from a durability perspective, I personally find they destroy a little more easily than the ones that are fitted. But when you like handle the new product, I would say it can feel a little more premium.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit easier for kids to grip
Well, maybe.
the padded ones. They have a little bit of foam under the art, which gives it that sort of soft feel.
Mine is not wrapped. Mine has some of the touchy feel features.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's like, this is like where they put fabric underneath.
Uh-huh.
And actually maybe even like the glimmer on it.
I'm glad you showed that because that's something that I was thinking of and I didn't get a sample of that. There's all kinds of fabric and textures that you can
Yeah,
put
this is, I
into
don't, can you see that? Like there's a sparkling one. This is about the different things that this has like a leather nose.
yeah.
And then there's one, there's like a scratch. This is the one the kids always love.
Mm-hmm.
Or this the scratchy tongue. So this, I mean, that's a cool feature they can build. But that said, this book I think costs $13 for its 5 spreads. Like for me as an adult, I think this is useless, but kids like the interactive features of it. So
Yeah, of course.
there's sort of that challenge when designing the book, right? You need to appeal to both the purchasing audience or gifting audience, but also the end user who's a kid. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those.
So that actually sparks a question for me, if you don't mind my asking.
Yeah.
So the traditional wisdom in, I think, the picture book community is you want to shoot for about 32 pages all told. How does the fact that it's a board book change those numbers, aside from textures and those types of things? Because the page width is going to be a lot bigger.
I'm going to say something really fast, which is purely personal, and then Travis can smart answer that.
Okay.
So mine is a 16 spread board book. It has more like, not story, there's like one line, like one rhyming set per page. So my book converts nicely if you wanted to do a second format. I'm not sure if that's behind your question, but it's 16 spreads, which converts to a 32 page book more simply than if it was, say, a 10 spread book that you wanted to try and convert. But again, that's not my area of expertise. So Travis.
Yeah, and I would say it's less common to have as many spreads as what you had in yours. Typically, I would say 8 spreads would be kind of the magic number, but I have books here that have even less than that. So yeah, I think you can go up to 16 spreads, or if it doesn't really warrant that, you can get away with much less. Just depends on the type of book it is and the content, and I think it's totally up to whatever story you have or what you need to share.
And in the board book, the only thing I'm going to add to be annoying is the like where you think the value of your book will be. So in these shorter ones, I would say the value of this is in the interactive special features that are built into it, not the story, which is why there isn't even an author on this book. But then if you get into ones like this is a different book. It's also, I don't know if it's 16, but it's definitely over 12 spreads, and it's a bilingual book, so it's creating a structure, and so the value is in that. So I think it's about knowing your USP and then positioning your book in the range of board books, which might be as little as 5 spreads and could be up to 16.
Awesome. So going back to the value of what you're creating for the child, but also the value that the parent would see in it as well, that can also speak to the number of spreads.
Yeah. And the story, I would say, like what Travis said also, is the story. What does it warrant? Because I think books that kind of don't progress aren't fun to read.
If there's no narrative, we've got a problem to begin with.
Yeah, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah. And I think you also have to think about what other formats you plan to produce. Like if you're aiming for a board book and then you say, well, maybe I'll do a paperback through KDP just so that we have more options. Well, if it's an 8 spread book, 16 pages, that's not really going to be worth it for a paperback book. Um, so that's something to think about too. If you do less spreads, it's probably more beneficial to just leave it as a board book or an ebook. You know, you could have that as well.
And this is not that talk, but it does prompt me to think that one of the reasons why my formats fit nicely is because I did intend to sell on Amazon. And as an independent, excuse me, I wanted to use the KDP print on demand paperback version of my book to allow me to use Amazon advertising. So this is a whole other end of this production spectrum, but it is something I guess that's useful to consider early on. Is that part? Some people don't want to use Amazon and don't want to worry about advertising. That's not, they just sell off their own website and through their own channels, which is a totally viable way. It's just about thinking about that business model early on in the creative process about what the end product is going to be and what limitations there might be.
And along those same lines, if you do another format such as hardcover or paperback, it's best to have that in mind first, because you really want the book illustrated and designed for the larger format, which hardcover would typically be the largest format. You can always go down to a board book size, but it's much harder to go from a board book 6-inch whatever size board book up to 8.5-inch paperback or hardcover or whatever. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. Here's another sample of a book, a board book. This is, you know, you see board books that have like a panel over here where you can push buttons and it'll make animal noises or songs or whatever. This one is, it's a 7-spread book, but on each spread there's a little hole and you just cover it with your finger and it plays the song. Of course, it's not doing it now, but the mechanics behind that is actually in the last half of the book is actually for the whatever you want to call it, the motor or whatever. So those aren't pages. That's like one chunk of whatever with stuff inside.
The internal mechanisms.
Yeah.
I didn't bring this one either, but it actually had a wheel that you could turn, like one of those little paper wheels you used to make as kids, and then on like it would be, so essentially the wheel was between each set so that it would be like a front and a back, and it was turning something in the inside of the book. This is a different one that has like a cutout. So there's like a really big range of what is possible.
Yeah, sky's the limit. I've got several actually. This is one that, now this one is, let me see how many spreads this, because it's not very much at all. 5 spreads, but each spread is cut at a different angle, so all the pages are overlapping on the edge here, and as you turn it, the edges change a bit. And then on the last page here, this is a neat technique too. They have like a mirror in the back. I'm not sure what the story is about, but yeah. Good night, little friend. I'm not going to read it to you, but that's that.
I think the irregular cutting is also like really cool. This is one that was really popular with my son. So it's the different trucks. This is, I was going to say, so this is super irregular and it got destroyed when you think about longevity, but like he loved the way it was cut all differently.
That's a lot of fun, yeah. This is another sort of example of that, where each page has a number over here, and it's almost like tabs on the side of the book. I saw one, and I believe it was My Little Pony, where the tabs were across the top, and they were like half circles with the ponies' faces on them, and so you turn and see each one, each character, each color, or whatever it is.
Another one we haven't shown yet, I don't think, are flaps. Do you have any with flaps? Because they're extreme. I mean, again, they also get ripped off. I think that maybe eliminates some of the durability of the book feature, but kids sure love a good flap.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can come, you'll notice that board books have different thicknesses for the pages. Some of them are a bit thinner, like the one you just showed. Let me see what I have here. I know I have a couple of different ones. This is one where there's like, this is not a flat book though. This is a flat book, and they're quite thin flaps, and usually to be able to do this, especially this one, it's like 3 sheets of paper glued together for each.
Or cardboard, or like 3 of cardstock.
Yeah, so that you get that effect. You open the flap and there's a picture inside, and that picture is printed on the middle card because there's flaps on both sides. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have that middle card, then you'd be opening both flaps and looking through, you know.
There's an extremely popular cutout book, and I think it's a heart. I can't remember I don't have it, but I've seen it, and it's like different layers of a heart. So then every page you open, there's obviously a heart cut out differently, but then all the way get to the back, and that's, I mean, the end of the story. But so again, just that is it called die cut?
Yeah.
Into the die cutting into the book, and I would say that is can be a really like powerful. Again, so here it's a handle, which my kids just love, a simple little handle. Yeah. But die cutting, I mean, different books have, you know, different spots cut out in the story, which allows you to see something from the previous page on a specific spot. So like spotlighting something earlier in the book as you work through it, which is a cool, I would say, a way to play with the publishing. I did not do that in my first book.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot that goes into having books built that way. Each spread or each page has to be developed specifically for that, and I'm sure it can be expensive, but if you're printing in the thousands, then it may be worth it to add that little bit of creativity to a book and really make it stand out.
I think maybe that's, I mean, I said quickly about not print on demand, but it does require this investment of printing a certain volume of books. So that is an important thing, I guess, to mention and think about when planning your project.
This is a quite thin board, but it lets you open the flap, and it kind of reveals a bit more of the illustration inside. And I've actually seen the same technique with a paperback. It's a bit thicker paper. It's actually a Little Critter book, which we're fans of, but you open the flap inside and the story is expanded, or the illustration is expanded to reveal more. There was one that I had with, this one. This is also a flap book, but the boards are much, much thicker, and so much more durable flaps. They're not going to tear quite as easy. Now, I'm sure right at the crease they may still rip eventually, but that's a little bit different from the others that were a little more flimsy. There's this one, and I don't know how well I can show it on the screen here, but instead of a flap, there's actually these doors that you can slide. So there's a lip here that keeps it from going and getting lost inside the page, but you can slide it back and forth to reveal different parts of the illustration. So that's a lot of fun too. And there's one on each. And they've got flaps that you can just open too. But there's at least one on each spread, I think, like that. Yeah. And the last one I have is this one. I can't really show it. The cover has a die cut, and the library has put some film over it, so you can't actually feel it. But under the die cut, they have like a foil, or I'm not even sure if you can call this. It's like a textured foil, I guess. But they use different colors throughout the book, and it's not just the cover. It's every spread has these different die cuts with different colored foils underneath to kind of enhance each illustration throughout. So that one's interesting too. I don't know if you can see the reflection there. So yeah, lots of different ways that you can be creative with the final product of a board book, and I think that's what makes board books fun. You know, if you're going to do a board book, think of ways to really expand it. Now, I don't know for your book, your first book at least, Lindsay. Maybe there wasn't really room for that. It didn't really match the content to do something like that.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I could have, but I think it wasn't baked in like the essence of what the book needed to be. What we did do that is kind of fun. I had her do, and I'm gonna forget this now, but I had in the typography, it's integrated. So
yeah,
it's like many books, it might just have the straight text, but so for mine, I had her actually like weave the text into the whatever was happening on the image. So like here you have a sleeping kid, and it's almost in the shape of an I think in this one, or it's, it centralizes the kid in the offset, the other half of the illustration. So I think that was some creative freedom that I left with my illustrator graphic designer. It's the same girl that helped me, but she was able to do a lot of fun things in how she represented like either thoughts, like in thought
mm,
bubbles, or weaving the text into the illustration. So that was fun. Like this is one of my favorite where she's got the baby like
yeah, sliding
sliding
down.
down sliding down the text. So that
Yeah,
even let's say like a technically simple straight cut book, um, there are some fun ways
that's
to
the
make it
beauty
creative.
of not having so many words. You can really get creative with the text and how it flows and interacts with the illustrations. So yours does that well. I remember that. Well, it's the top of the hour, as they say. Hopefully, it doesn't turn off automatically. I don't think it will. But just to wrap things up, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me and being willing to be my guinea pig. And
It's been
Lauren,
fun.
yeah, thank you, Lauren, for joining us. And again, if anyone watching this later has any need for design of their book, I hope you will reach out to me. You can contact me at launchmissioncreative.com. There's a button there to get a quote for your book. And I also have a webinar coming up in 3 weeks, and it's called Illustrated by Design. I'll be talking about how to search for, interact with, and hire your next illustrator. So this one is going to be maybe a lot more detailed, a lot more information to go through. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. There's so many people out there who are going to Fiverr and other places, and I just want to show some maybe some better sources to find illustrators. So we'll be doing that in 3 weeks. So if you're interested in that, sign up. Um, I think that covers it.
I don't know, Lauren, if you had one more question. I saw you come
Yeah,
up.
yeah. I meant to do question and answer. Absolutely, Lauren. Do you have anything else?
You guys have been completely fantastic. You've given me a lot of things that I'm going to need to think about and do a lot more research on. And I suppose that, I guess the biggest questions that I would have is, so when you are looking at doing a board book, what is a good sample budget for the first round of printing? Like, I know that's going to be a little bit different as far as like hardcover, just by the basis of what it is and the fact that it's going to be thicker paper. Like, so what is a
Mhm.
range? So if you're exploring different printers, how do you know what's fair?
The first thing I mean, don't get less than, like, get 3 quotes, like go to at least 3 companies. So if, for example, you went and downloaded my free thing, just ask for a quote of what you imagine your book product to be. And I don't, I got my quotes like a year and a half ago at least. And so, and I was printing at a volume, in the end, I ended up printing about 3,000 copies of my book. I would say you start getting volume discounts at 500. So I would say if you go on, and even like if there's some way to find 1,000, that's when you start really getting volume discounts for how many copies you ordered. So I hate giving a price range, but let's say between $2 and $5 depending per book. depending on how many you order. So if you think about it as like if you have in some ways it's made up in the beginning until you start getting real quotes and having a real idea of what features you want to enter. That's the other thing. It really depends how many features you're going to weave. So mine, let's stick with what I can actually tell you about, is a 16 spread. So that's also a lot of pages. And I went with a pretty thick, but also not so thick cardstock that it wouldn't make sense for how many spreads. And I ended up paying, I don't know, I want to say, let's say 2.5 per book ish. I don't know, maybe a little more, a little less, but you should get the quotes, know that they're negotiable, I would recommend. So like ask, shop around, be sure that you ask for a price that includes shipping to wherever you want it. And consider duties. So depending on where you have them printed, whether that's relevant also to consider is whether they need to be imported to your delivery address.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend going with 1,000 as a minimum. And also keep in mind that, yeah, they may give you shipping included in the price they give you, but that doesn't include customs. If of course, if you're shipping to the U.S., you have to cover the customs clearance, which can be a few $100s for that as well.
And ground transportation from the port. So sometimes I think people think they get a shipping, but it's actually only to a ship in a port, not to a home address. So things like this.
Amazing. That's a black swan kind of question that you wouldn't know to ask before you did it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I had no expertise with customs clearance and all that. I was not even expecting it. I was kind of hit blindsided with that. And so I had a lot to learn within a short time. And if it sits at the warehouse once it arrives to the US and you don't get it cleared within a certain number of days, you actually get hit with a lot of other penalties potentially, or could even lose your whole shipment if it's not worked out. So not to scare anyone, but yeah, definitely kind of have your ducks in a row and do some research on customs clearance and what you'll need for that.
And I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of this. People think about, making a book and printing a book, but there's like a logistical back end to this that normally doesn't get discussed. So I think it's great to tap into people who've been through the process, because there's a lot to be gained by leveraging experience in this.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much.
No problem. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad you joined us. Lauren, do you have a copy of Lindsay's book?
I actually ordered it for a friend of mine who's pregnant.
Oh, that's perfect.
Good.
And congratulations to your friend.
Oh, thanks. I'll pass it along. I'll be like, I talked to the author and she said you'd need this.
Yeah. And she really hopes it helps someday when you're up really late or really early and just want like a high five from a mom who has a lot of kids.
Perfect.
And
I will 100% share that along.
All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, and good luck with everything you have going on. We look forward to seeing the journey and celebrating with you.
Travis, do you have a Facebook page, or where do you normally share about graphic design, awesomeness, and events?
I'm on Instagram, and I have a Facebook page as well, Launch Mission, at Launch Mission for both of those.
Okay.
So that's a good place to find me, or my website again, launchmissioncreative.com.
And your events and webinars will all be there, right? For all the good stuff you've got planned?
Yeah. And I have a lot of different webinars planned. Like I said, it's going to be the whole journey of publishing. So I want to talk about how design affects the editing stage and how it affects, like I said, looking for an illustrator and the interaction with the illustrator and having it printed and every step along the way. The design part of it is so integrated with every facet of the journey. So it'll be a unique perspective, I think, for everyone.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Thanks so much. I know it's getting late over here in Europe, so I'm going to draw this to a close, but thank you so much, and I wish you all well.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.